All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show here at Levi's on a Friday for a Thursday schedule, but on a Friday as the Niners get ready for the Monday Nighter against the Minnesota Vikings. All right, let's talk about the day that was down here in Santa Clara. Christian McCaffrey did not practice today. He worked with the Niners strength coach and trainer out on the side. We don't know his status for Monday. We'll probably find out tomorrow what his status is for Monday. But he did not practice today. There was no Trent Williams today. There was no Deebo Samuel today. So there's a chance that the Niners will not have any of those three guys on Monday against the Vikings. Now, Trent Williams to me is the big one because if you don't have Trent Williams, that means you have Jalen Moore at left tackle. Danielle Hunter is a tremendous rusher. He goes up against left tackles about 25% of the time. If you have Jalen Moore out there, the odds are that's going to be a higher percentage on Monday night. So it's a big moment for Jalen Moore if he winds up starting that game on that fast surface against one of the league's best rushers. Danielle Hunter leads the NFL with 8 sacks, and he is just, as Tim Ryan said the other day, he's shredded like salad, which was one of the lines of the year from Tim Ryan. But on a more serious note, Jalen Moore's going to struggle against Danielle Hunter if that's the deal. So we don't know the status of Trent Williams. He did not practice today. We don't know the status of Deebo Samuel. He did not practice today. And we don't know the status of Christian McCaffrey. He did not practice today. So, I'm not really sure if any of those three guys are going to go on Monday night. Now, I think they ought to sit down CMC. As far as Deebo and Trent, I guess I would have to see how that goes. But I just think CMC looks like he's just beaten up from all the hits that he's taken. Also, Christian's on a 400 touch pace, and I think the Niners desperately need to slow that down as the season progresses. Plus, at running back, you have Elijah Mitchell, who's been a full go all week this week in practice. In fact, Elijah Mitchell's career best game came against Minnesota, so we'll see if he can replicate that on Monday night. Also, I expect whoever starts, I expect we're going to see both backs. We're going to see Elijah Mitchell. We're going to see J.P. Mason. Mason looks great. He's powerful. He's 235 pounds. He's fast. He's explosive. He looks really, really good. So Mitchell's clearly going to get the start if CMC can't go. Kyle didn't say that as much, but when he was asked about Mason, he starts talking about Mitchell. He loves Mitchell. He's going to play Mitchell. He's going to start Mitchell. As sure as I'm sitting here, I can tell you that for sure. But I think both guys are also going to go. And I think you'll see the 49ers diversify their rushing attack. First of all, even if Christian can play, I expect there to be a much more evenly distributed group of running back carries. I don't think it'll be all Christian if he goes. My guess is he doesn't go, and then it's all Mitchell and Mason on Monday night. Today, by the way, is the 1-year anniversary of Christian McCaffrey being traded from the Panthers to the 49ers. What a great trade that was. And if there's anything to take from that trade, it's that the 49ers are thinking big. And I think that still stands to this moment. The Niners are thinking big. They didn't need Christian McCaffrey. They had Elijah Mitchell. They had Jeff Wilson Jr. They had other running backs that they could have leaned on last year. But they're thinking big, and so they went out and got Christian McCaffrey. Now, I'm not saying that John Lynch is going to do something similar this year, but John Lynch and the Niners are thinking big. And so just because you think they've got a position covered, like they picked up Randy Gregory, do they really need another defensive end? Well, you know what? They're all about winning the Super Bowl. So anything they think is going to vault them over the top, they're going to do. And McCaffrey has made them a dramatically better football team. They improved by over 6 points per game after he arrived last year, and you see his impact this year. He's one of the leading guys for the MVP of the league. So just because the 49ers have a good player doesn't mean they're adverse to adding a great player. And that's going to be interesting as the trade deadline comes up here in a few days, or about 10 days, 2 weeks. Do the Niners add at any number of positions? Like, they've got some good tight ends. They add a Zach Ertz. They've got some good corners. Do you add a Sean Murphy Bunting? They have some good interior defensive linemen. Do you add a DJ Jones or a Leonard Williams? They have some really good defensive ends. Do you add Brian Burns or Josh Uche or Daniil Hunter? Or do you go with somebody lesser, like maybe an Arden Key? So just because on paper it appears they have a position filled doesn't necessarily mean that they won't look to upgrade that position at the trade deadline. So that's something to remember as we get closer to the NFL trade deadline. I did get a chance to ask Brock Purdy today about George Kittle. George Kittle, Purdy to Kittle last year was prolific. I mean, they absolutely, Kittle was just a much better player with Brock Purdy last year than he had been before Purdy got in the lineup. This year, Kittle has not touched the football nearly as much. And I asked Brock about it, and he just said, it's not a product as much about defenses and what they're taking away. He says it's a little bit scheme, it's a little bit by design. I think Kittle might have been a little dinged up coming out of camp. It's a little bit that they like to feature Ayuk and Debo and Christian McCaffrey a little bit. But he said, hey, man, there's still plenty of time. There's still plenty of time to get George involved and expect to see George involved. A couple notes as far as Monday night. Niners will be wearing the white jerseys. They're not going throwbacks. They're going with their regular white. So Vikings will be in the purple jerseys on Monday night. Niners are going to be in the white jerseys with the gold pants on Monday night. It'll be interesting to see how the Niners defense goes up against Kirk Cousins. Cousins is a veteran quarterback who doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He's number 2 in passing yards. He's very, very consistent. He almost cannot be fooled with any kind of tricks or blitzing at the line of scrimmage. His number 1 protector is Christian Darrisaw, and we're probably going to see Bosa against Darrisaw. That should be one of the better matchups that we see on Monday night. The wild card in this game is Josh Metellus, the nickelback. Minnesota's blitzing on 37% of the snaps under Brian Flores. So they send blitzes a lot, and even when they're not sending blitzes, they're sending some odd 4-man rushes where they're dropping some defensive tackles into coverage, and they're actually rushing Josh Metellus as a nickel corner off the edge. Metellus has got some impact ability as a rusher. The big one, obviously, is Daniil Hunter. Can the Niners handle Daniil Hunter on Monday Night Football? He's got 8 sacks. He's been fantastic. The one benefit the Niners do have is Marcus Davenport, who was signed as a free agent in the offseason, is on IR, so they won't have the bookends. But, man, Daniil Hunter is just an absolute force of nature right now. He's so fast and so long. 6'5", 265, long levers, really, really explosive. He's going to be no picnic on that carpet to have to deal with. I did ask Steve Wilks a couple questions. I joked with him. I said, Steve, you've always been a straight shooter. And I said, you're always very calm with us. Can you share with us your reaction to the Tayshaun Gibson penalty? And he's like, I can't share my reaction because he was dropping probably a bunch of F-bombs. But he also went on to just say he thought it was a clean play. And, there's a word that describes the Tayshaun Gibson hit on that receiver, and it's called textbook. It was a textbook hit, and it was a terrible call by the officials. And I'm sure Steve went nuts in the booth, but I had to joke him about it. Today he said he couldn't tell us what he said, but that he thought it was a clean hit. And he thought it was a clean hit. Why? Because it was a clean hit. And then I also asked him about missed tackles. There were different people that charted the game differently. So I've saw as low as 10 missed tackles and as high as 18 missed tackles for the 49ers in that Browns game. Way, way too many. And I asked him about it today. I said, what's the magic elixir? Do you talk about it? Do you yell? Do you scream? And he's like, well, I don't know if it does anybody benefit to yell. But he said that, hey, look, we had pads on today. We practiced with our pads on. And for him, he said, you know what? It's going back to the fundamentals. We get so worried in totals and different thoughts about scheme that guys get away from their fundamentals. And he said it's really just about the fundamentals. And so they were wearing pads today, and they were emphasizing fundamentals as far as tackling because they don't want to be the poor tackling team that they showed themselves to be last week. All right, thanks to Pig in a Pickle for being the title sponsor of The Krug Show. And thanks to all you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube,